How's it
Hey,
going?
what's going on, Mike? You hear me?
I can hear you okay. Can you hear me?
All right. Yeah, not that great. I think my computer is just being a bit slow, but it's fine. I think we're good to go.
Is this any better?
Yeah, I think we're good. All right,
Okay.
so let's just hop right into it. Topic of the debate. Obviously, I am supporting the motion that all drugs should be made legal.
Okay.
Now, the reason why I say this is there are reasons why I say this. We're going to go with one to begin with, and then we'll come around to the second. My main contention is that I don't believe government should be able to tell any individual what they do in their private life, whether they can or cannot do that. Now, that applies to alcohol, that applies to the food that they eat, that applies to whether they decide they want to go bungee jumping or skydiving, regardless of whether the thing that they're doing is putting their life at risk, increasing the chance that what they're doing is going to harm themselves. The government has no authority to tell any single person about what they do in their individual life. That's my first contention. I want to hear what you say about that. And then we're going to come back to actually, regardless of that contention, whether what the government is doing is helping or not.
Okay. I will respond to that just simply as this. Do you agree that individuals that are incapable of making informed decisions should have the protection of the government? This includes anyone that is impaired. This includes children. This includes individuals that are not able to make decisions for themselves, at least make informed decisions. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. I will argue that for some drugs, once an individual has become addicted to them, they're no longer able to make informed decisions for themselves because they're addicted, and the addiction causes them to not be able to make a rational decision. It takes away their free will. It takes away their ability to make sound decisions for themselves. We see this in the fact that many addicts, I would say most addicts, need help in order to break their addiction. When an individual is no longer to make decisions for themselves because of their addiction, they need someone to step in and make decisions for them because they're no longer capable of making those decisions. In the case of adults, there is no other adult that has the authority to step in for an adult to make that decision for them. For children, their parents can step in. We grant parents that right. For another adult, there is no other adult that can step in. The only people that can step in for an adult is a government agency, is the government. So the government acts on behalf of those individuals that are incapable of acting for themselves, and those are the people who are addicted to drugs. How do you respond
Do
to that?
you hold the same position with alcohol?
I I do hold the same position with alcohol. The difference is, um, I guess, threat or risk to reward. Same with alcohol, I think, is akin to driving. If driving killed, like heroin, if heroin kills 2 out of every 100 people that use it per year, so meth kills 1 out of every 500. If driving had those same statistics, or if alcohol had those same statistics, the government would step in and ban those
So
as well.
what's the threshold? What's the number that it has to be that for the government to be able to step in, and why that number?
I would assume that it would have to be insignificant. I mean, personally, I would say that no number is high enough that the government should. I mean, the government does regulate alcohol, does regulate driving. There are government regulations on all these things. So the government comes in and does step in, and anything that is dangerous and makes regulations to make it less dangerous. So you would not say that no laws and no regulations should be put on alcohol. That would be silly, right? You would, of course, people aren't. It needs to be illegal for people to drink and drive. It needs to be illegal for people to take advantage of other people while they're drunk. These are things that the government has to step in because of the dangers of alcohol and individuals not being able to make their choice. So the law comes in to make those choices for individuals.
No. So for the sake of this debate, let's just say that I'm advocating that drugs should be regulated just as much as alcohol. Would you agree with that?
I would say that there's a number of drugs that could be regulated just as alcohol. Marijuana, of course, should be regulated just like alcohol is being regulated.
Let's say cocaine.
I don't agree that cocaine should, uh, just because of the risk to benefit ratio. The government, there's no standard by which the government would be able to regulate cocaine that it wouldn't regulate it into being illegal. if cocaine wasn't as dangerous as it is. I mean, cocaine's a Schedule II substance. It's used in some medical practices. It has some medical benefits, so it is regulated. Cocaine is not illegal. Taking cocaine without a prescription is illegal. So cocaine is
so
regulated.
that's my question. I'm not talking about the prescription. Would you advocate cocaine being just as legal as alcohol, that I can go into a store and buy cocaine, obviously provided that I'm above a certain age? Obviously, I can't operate a vehicle under the influence because then I will be harming other people. But why would you not advocate? I'm just trying to understand what the difference is between alcohol, or if you don't want to use alcohol, we could just use not eating healthy foods, eating fast foods. Why would you not? What's the differentiation between the two?
The health risk. I mean, it just simply boils down to that, not the health risk of drinking alcohol. If you follow all the laws by alcohol, is the same as eating unhealthy food. You know, if you abuse that, if you
so why wouldn't cocaine fall into the same category?
It's not the same. The way cocaine works, the way that it impacts our body, the way that in order to maintain the high that people would seek from cocaine, they have to use it. That leads to a dependency much more rapidly than alcohol, much more rapidly. It's so rapid that you would develop a dependency rather quickly.
Okay, so here's my questions. I don't think even say that that's true. Say alcohol, once you drink alcohol for the first time, the dependency takes a longer time to develop than cocaine does. Why are you drawing the line at that level of dependency? What is the line that you're drawing of the level of dependency that is necessary for the government to step in and make it illegal? And why is that threshold in between alcohol and cocaine? Why is it not below alcohol as well?
I mean, I guess I don't really see what you're asking me. I think what you're asking me is, why don't I think that alcohol should be regulated as heavily as cocaine? And
made illegal, yeah.
Okay, so I don't think that it would be made illegal because it is not as dangerous as cocaine. I mean, that's just basically where it boils down to. Now, you want me to give you what I think would be as dangerous a substance. I mean, I don't even think that it's fair to compare cocaine to alcohol. If you want to compare alcohol to marijuana, we can do that. If you want to compare alcohol to mushrooms, or maybe to LSD, or to some other non-hard drug, then we can compare that. But I don't think it's fair to compare cocaine to alcohol, though. I think those substances just are in different classes.
Why is it not fair?
Well, I mean, if cocaine wasn't as dangerous as it is, it wouldn't have been made illegal in the first place.
What do you mean as dangerous? People die. Dying is the highest level of danger you can get. So people die from both. Many people, tens of thousands. But if you're talking about not eating healthy, you're talking about hundreds of thousands, close to millions. So what do you mean not as dangerous? Dying is the most dangerous.
When you're talking about the numbers about the people who use it, like the percentage of people who die from alcohol-related deaths compared to the percentage of people who drink alcohol in a year, is not very high. I mean, we can look up some numbers. I looked up numbers for heroin.
So prior to looking up those numbers, what percentage does it have to be for you to say that it should be made illegal?
A significant percentage. I mean, I think it's not unreasonable to say that marijuana, that alcohol, that all controlled, or all substances like that, should be highly regulated and should be made illegal. I mean, if you're going to say that if they cause danger, I mean, if you can't eliminate the danger, I mean, I'm not saying that that's wrong. I don't have a personal problem with people, but it would seem perfectly justified to make those illegal if you're going to go with safety. I mean, surely you recognize that there is an inherent danger in the abuse of alcohol, and there's an inherent danger for the individual in the abuse of other drugs, right? So,
correct.
You're saying that all drugs should be legalized. So it just is unfathomable to me to be able to think that you'd be able to go to your local drugstore and buy methamphetamine. First, I mean, of course, it would have to be, prescription grade, or at least commercial commercial grade, because you wouldn't go and buy methamphetamine that exists now, but to go to the corner store and buy heroin. I mean, that seems unfathomable to me, because you know that if 500 people come into that store and buy heroin, 2 of them are going to die. So
And
that's
alcohol, and if 500 and if 500 came in to buy alcohol, say one will die.
no, it's not.
Why are you
It's,
drawing
but
the
it's
line
not
that
that.
one's
It's
okay,
not
two
that
isn't?
high. If you have 10
All
million
right, so
people,
let's use different numbers. Let's say 10,000 come in that buy heroin. 10,000 that buy heroin, 10 will die. 10,000 that buy alcohol, 2 will die. Let's say 5 times the amount that buy heroin will die more than alcohol. Why are you drawing the line? Why are you saying 2's fine, legalize alcohol, 10's not fine, make heroin illegal? I want to know why you're drawing the line there.
just practicality. Same reason why we draw the line at people get to drive cars. I mean, people want to do it. It's they get taxes from it, so there's a benefit to that number. And then it's such an insignificant, not to the people whose loved ones die. It's not insignificant. That's what I'm trying to say. But in the amount of people who die, say in car crashes, compared to the amount of people who drive every year, or every day, even, to the people that died, the amount of people that die, or the risk of the people of getting injured in car wrecks, is so insignificant that it doesn't make it practical to
No,
outlaw.
well, I disagree. I think car crashes, the reason why we don't make it illegal is because just because somebody dies because of something doesn't mean you make it illegal. It's something which obviously is beneficial to society, but it's something that just because somebody takes something that's legal, for instance, a hammer, and kills somebody with it, doesn't mean you should make it illegal. So I think that's a little bit of a red herring. I think that's a bit off topic. I want to know
I don't
specifically
think so.
the
I mean,
differentiation between alcohol and. Let me explain like this. Let's say alcohol, which I think the numbers happen to be skewed because the amount of people that die from alcohol is pretty substantial. But say the amount of people that die from alcohol is 2 out of every 10,000. Say the people that die from coke is 4 out of every 10,000. Say the people that die from heroin is 10 out of every 10,000. Why is the line that you're drawing between alcohol and everything else, and why not in between coke and heroin? Maybe the number's 5 out of every 10,000. I want to know what calculation are you using, or what logic are you using that alcohol, food, because I understand that the reason why it's an emotional decision that a lot of people make, because drugs are just sound so bad. Oh, drugs are bad, so let's draw the line there. But I want to know, as far as a logical
no.
reason.
I think you can't make that. Don't make that argument for me. Don't put that in my words. I don't think that all drugs are bad. I mean, I own a pharmacy. I think a lot of drugs are good. I think there are certain drugs that are bad by definition. To take certain drugs, they harm your body. To take heroin is all bad, except for the individual feels that bit of high, but the what the drug does to their body is bad. There is no benefit for driving
alcohol as well.
Not, I mean, for alcohol, the way that it works, I mean, you have to admit the risk of it is much lower. If you're going to drink one glass of alcohol, you're not going to become addicted to alcohol. You're not going to even be impaired enough to risk driving. You as an adult male can drink a glass of alcohol and not be impaired enough to drive. You as an adult male take one hit of methamphetamine, and you're going to be able to. Would you
Nope.
risk? Will you trust
If I
yourself
take
driving?
the tiniest flake, see, that's a loaded scenario. You're creating a scenario on one side that you're taking an amount that's not affecting you. On the other side, you're taking an amount that is affecting you. You're not comparing like with like. There is an amount of methamphetamines that I could take that will not affect me.
Okay, and I don't know how you would get that amount. You can't even be dosed in the amount of methamphetamine.
Of course, if I buy a bag of methamphetamine on the street corner and I take the tiniest dust of it and take it in any which way, shape, or form, it will do absolutely nothing to me.
Okay. I'm going to grant you that there is an amount of methamphetamine that you can take that would not do anything for you or do anything against you. I don't know that you would be able to practically dose that amount. Maybe you could. There are certain drugs that even the tiniest bit amount will hurt you. I mean, fentanyl. If you get powdered fentanyl on you, even the smallest amount can cause you to have severe reaction to death. There's nothing you can do about it. There's just getting enough on your fingertip from picking up something that has fentanyl on it is enough to kill you. So to say that there are some drugs that that should be illegal. I mean, you'd have to agree that there are certainly some drugs that should be made illegal for people to have, right? I mean, drugs that are just so dangerous that there's no practical way that the people people could handle them and not kill them and not get themselves killed or get themselves hurt in some way. I use fentanyl as an example because that's the one we're dealing with a lot in my industry, but you're hearing about it a lot on the news. It is a very dangerous drug. Small amounts, even laced in other drugs, are enough to kill somebody. I mean, do you think fentanyl in that form that's so dangerous should be made illegal and should be able to be sold at the local drugstore just like any other drug?
Well,
I mean,
the reason why I draw a line by fentanyl is makes it extremely easy to kill other people. Now, when and the distinction that I'm making is, and the distinction that I always make is, what one individual does to themselves in private, no man has any right to say what they can or cannot do. Now, whether that's eating unhealthy, which can kill them, whether that's bungee jumping, skydiving, whether that's drinking alcohol or taking drugs. What people do, what one person will do to another person, that that is something that can be regulated. Now, fentanyl, you're reaching a point. It's like somebody owning a cannon or a tank or an individual owning a F-35. 100%, I can understand very well a reason to go ahead and regulate that. But when anything you step to the left of that, you're really going to get into a quagmire. If you're saying that you would allow government to regulate some and not others, it boils down to the basic question: do you believe that government, or any man, which is really what government is, has a right to tell an individual what they can or cannot do in private? And if the answer to that is yes, the question is, at what point does that stop? At what point can they tell you? Do you say, "Oh, that's enough. Now you can't tell me anymore that of what I do in private"? And where do you draw that line and why?
okay.
And so it really boils down to the question that I posed earlier: that why would you say that the government can say you cannot in private ingest any drug, however you could in private eat food or drink alcohol, which would also increase the likelihood of either ruining your life or ultimately death?
Okay. I'll answer that on two parts. The first part is, I think the main reason is that the average individual, and I would say this implies for everybody, including myself, I wouldn't know the appropriate dose to give myself of fentanyl to not kill myself. The average individual does not know the appropriate safe dose of certain types of medications, and they don't know. And once they're
They
on,
don't know because it's illegal.
well, they don't know because I mean, you can't know everybody's body.
Yeah, no, but if it was legal
Like a
and the
certain
studies were being done, then people would know a lot more than they do now. Hello? I'm not sure if that was your computer or mine, but you're gone. Oh, there we go. There you
Okay.
are.
Yeah, I just had to refresh here. So let me just. So I would say that's an interesting point that you're making, that you don't think that is because they're illegal, people don't know the right dosage. But I would go that the right dosage to a drug that like that is not something that people will know, and it's not something that a person who is high will be able to keep in mind and be fair. For instance, when you talked about cocaine earlier. Many people, when taking cocaine, take the cocaine and then immediately within 10 minutes or 15 minutes take the cocaine again because their high is starting to come down, and then they immediately take the cocaine again. Now, the more and more that they take this cocaine, the less able they are to make rational decisions because they are increasingly high on cocaine. And so then they're not going to be able, even if it says on the cocaine package, I can't even imagine that you'd be able to buy it in a nice box that has a wrapping that says this is how often you're supposed to take it. by the time they're 3 or 4 or 5 rows in, they're not going to be reading the package on the label. Especially you mix that with alcohol, or you mix it with some other label. There's no way that we would be able to justify. There's no individual who would be able to risk. I mean, even in the regular medication scene, whose responsibility are you going to give to the individual to sell the drugs to? I mean, who are you going to? You're going to come to a pharmacist and say, here, now we're going to make these prescription medication, prescription methamphetamine, or prescription cocaine, or prescription heroin. So as a licensed pharmacist, you're going to have to dispense this medication. Well, no pharmacist is ever going to dispense heroin, because there's no way that they're going to be able to control what the individual is. So there's no practical way to provide it. You're never going to be able to put it out on the shelf with the aspirin, because you're never going to be able to control who gets the medication or not. So it's always going to have to be controlled in some way.
I'm not talking, just to clarify, I'm not talking about medicinal. I'm talking about all out legalization, just like alcohol, which you can buy in a bodega, or just like any unhealthy food that you can buy in a bodega, or just like any single person could go skydiving or bungee jumping.
So how are you going to, I mean, I guess it's just as impractical to even think about it. How are you going to be able, I mean, what do you imagine? Say somebody wants to come in and buy some heroin. They're going to buy 1 dose of heroin. How do we know if they're dosed based on their body weight? Are they given to, to an individual, says, what's your body weight? What's your metabolism? How often have you been taking the heroin? How is this your first time? Is this your 10th time? Have you been doing it for a year? I mean, it's just completely impractical, because you would then have people who are selling it to them. The individual who is selling the drug to them, the legalized individual, is going to be selling it to somebody who will die, who is likely to die.
So we'll get into that part again. That's the second part, as whether legalization would be more beneficial or not. But this is more of a philosophical question. It boils down to, can you walk over to me and say, hey, buddy, what you're doing is unhealthy, you cannot do it?
Okay.
Does any single person have a right to tell another person what they're doing in private, that they cannot do it due to the fact that they believe that it's unhealthy, harmful?
You're absolutely right. There's no individual. I can't come to you. I have no right to come to you and say you can't do this. I don't have that right. The only entity that has that right is the state that we have agreed. You and I assume you're in America. I don't know. But we have agreed to live in America. So we agree to live by America's rules. We agree to live in our society. So we agree to be subservient to this community that we're living in. I mean, that's an agreement.
So say America got up tomorrow and said, hey, alcohol, it's bad for you. It's causing tens of thousands of deaths. It's bad. No more alcohol. It's illegal.
Okay. I mean, if they're able to back that up, it probably wouldn't work given the history of alcohol, because people, I mean, they tried to do that. They didn't.
Right. No, so we're going to get into the practical application of it, but I'm talking about now just as far as philosophically. Would you be okay if they made all alcohol illegal?
I mean, of course I would be okay if that's what the law that got passed. I mean, how could you not be okay with the law? That's just what the law is.
Slavery used to be a law as well. That doesn't make it okay.
Oh, our society changed. So if our society has changed to recognize that some drugs aren't as bad as other drugs.
If the government got up tomorrow and said killing is legal, you'd be okay with it? It's now law?
I mean, if these are impractical things, I mean, yes, of course, if they come up and they say that's what the law is, I'm going to be okay with it, because they would have reasons and justifications behind it. I mean, that seems...
You have way too much faith in government, let me tell you, man.
You don't have
way too much faith in government. You
don't have faith in your community, or in your family, in your community, in your city, in your state. I mean, it's not like everyone is out to get us. It's not like the government.
It's not a question of out to get us. The question, you have to think as an individual, whether you think each policy is acceptable or not, and not just say, hey, government did it, I'm going to accept it. It's now law.
I mean, you have to accept it if it's law, or you have to try to get it changed. I mean, you can't go into.
I'm talking about philosophically accepted. I'm talking about whether you should agree with it. Do you agree with it that it's right, or do you not agree with it?
I would not personally agree that they should outlaw alcohol. I don't think alcohol.
That same stance you just said on alcohol, would you apply that to drugs as well?
I know that some people have that position on all drugs. I don't personally hold that position. I mean,
that right there, where you said you personally wouldn't advocate that and see eye to eye with alcohol, but with drugs you would. Why? What's the difference between alcohol and drugs that you're making that distinction that you're making.
I think we're using drugs as too loose of a term. There are most certainly drugs that I think should not be outlawed, that I think should be legalized, that I think are overly restricted, that I think we should be able to tax, and we should be able to make reasonable laws. We should be able to be making money out of them, just like they're doing in Colorado with marijuana. There are certainly drugs that do not merit being illegal. There are also certain drugs that certainly do merit being illegal. You've already said yourself that there are some reasons why certain drugs should be made illegal, like fentanyl, because they're too dangerous to just have out in public. So there are reasons to have some drugs be made illegal. There are reasons to have some drugs be made legal.
Yeah, but where I draw the line is with what people are doing to themselves versus what people are doing to others. But you're drawing that line in what people are doing to themselves, and I want to know where you. It's very clear where I draw my line. I'm trying to figure out where you draw your line and why.
My line is people cannot make rational decisions while on drugs, and they can,
and on alcohol,
and certainly on alcohol. That's why there are laws in place that if bartenders think that people are drinking too much.
So would you advocate the same laws that apply to alcohol apply to drugs?
They would apply to the drugs that were legalized, yes. I mean, we're
not talking about what the law is today. We're discussing what should be the law. What having logical consistency.
The logical consistency is that some drugs are too dangerous to be legalized at all. So
who decides?
Huh? I mean,
who decides what's dangerous and what's not too dangerous?
Our society decides.
Why is alcohol not too dangerous?
Because our society decided that it was not too dangerous.
I'm asking you, what do you believe? Do you believe that alcohol should be legal and drugs not? And if you're making that differentiation, why do you believe that
I feel like I've answered it, but because it's too dangerous to too many people. And a person who drinks alcohol by themselves for the first time that they drink a bottle of alcohol, maybe 1 in a million will die because they drink a whole bottle. They don't know what they're doing, and they're just starting. Maybe that happens 1 in a million times. Someone who takes methamphetamine, I don't even know how many people die the first time. Maybe not a lot, but I know that if individuals who use it, we have it here, that if they've used it in a year, of all the people that use methamphetamine in the year, 1 out of 500 die. So,
right, so again, it's loaded statistics over here because obviously the numbers aren't correct, and very, very many deaths are lost a year to alcohol. And that's what I said. It's not only alcohol. We can go back to eating healthy. Should the government say everybody must eat healthy? Because far many more lives are lost a year to people not eating healthy. So why would you advocate the government stepping in and say every single person must eat healthy? All unhealthy food is hereby illegal.
I mean, if
the percentage of people that die per year from not eating healthy is far greater than those that die from drug use.
I don't think that would be that it would be cost effective to do that. Would that be the morally right thing to do, or the ethically right thing for the government to do? Yes, it's not the practical thing for the government to do. The benefit.
Are you weighing monetary cost versus lives lost?
I mean, when you're weighing the monetary cost of preventing people from eating bad food, I mean, I guess I don't
versus millions of lives lost a year.
I mean, I don't think it's millions of lives lost a year. Maybe
maybe even hundreds of thousands of lives lost a year. People due to overeating, obesity, due to heart failure, due to any issue that's related to not eating healthy. Should the government mandate everybody eat a multivitamin a day?
It doesn't work like that. People don't die from a food overdose. People don't die from eating one hamburger or eating one hamburger a day.
100% correct. It's over a period of time. But if the government would have stepped in and made and outlawed and made illegal unhealthy food, the person at the end of the day would not have died due to the fact that they're eating unhealthy.
And I mean, you're not saying anything that I disagree with, but I'm just saying it's not practical.
So would you advocate the government coming in tomorrow, waking up and saying, hey, everybody,
the government already regulates food. I mean, they already make laws. They already
making illegal. This again, like with like, drugs are illegal. Fast food illegal.
If there was if there was a certain food that killed 1 in 500 people that ate it, the government should make that food illegal.
Yeah, it's not why certain food. There are many foods. All unhealthy foods kill
Okay.
far more people than drugs.
I don't. They don't kill far more people in drugs percentage wise, and I guess that's when you're talking about. You have to weigh the percentages. I mean, when you're talking about the number of people who use drugs in a year, particular drugs in the year, versus the number of people who die from using those drugs, directly die from overdose from those drugs, then I mean, it's not even. I mean, it's not even comparable. You can't even compare eating food to methamphetamine or heroin. I mean, I
And
just
not,
can't.
not just eating food, eating unhealthy food, which leads to hundreds of thousands of deaths a year.
Okay. I mean, I don't think that
Again,
those are compared. I think that that's. I don't think that that's a fair comparison. I mean, I've never
but
heard of anyone dying. I
re,
mean,
re, regardless, so that was the first part. Obviously, we don't see eye to eye over there. Let's get into the second part, and that's the application of legalizing drugs versus having them illegal. Now, granted, drugs are bad. Making drugs legal would increase the amount of people that use drugs. Granted, how much would it increase? Nobody knows, but it definitely would increase. But now let's look at the upsides of legalizing drugs. The drugs that will now be taken will be less lethal, would be cleaner drugs. That's one thing. Two, the drugs will be cheaper. The cheaper drugs will reduce the amount of robberies, killings, violence created over drug addicts uh, trying to obtain money to pay for their drugs. A drug addict will be a drug addict, and now if they're cheaper, they will not have to go rob, shoot, kill, steal to get that money. Three, it will greatly reduce the crime. It will all the gangs that are the vast majority of them are their money supply are based on the drug the entire drug industry will less collapse. And these upsides, again, to note why these upsides are so great, is we're containing the people to make their decisions their own life, right? The con was people more adding some drug addicts to it. Those, again, are people making decisions for themselves that will affect only themselves. And all the pros is we're taking away from what people are doing that are affecting others. We're taking away from the drug addicts from stealing, robbing, and killing, from the gangs also killing and shooting others. We will save tens of thousands of lives a year just by making it legal. Whereas saving tens of thousands of lives a year versus adding drug addicts, which you and I both don't know the number for that, and could increase the amount of people that die due to being a drug addict now. But you and I both don't know that number, and you cannot for certain say with certainty that that number far outweighs the tens of thousands of lives that are saved due to the fact that it's legal now.
okay, I'm just going to respond to that by saying what you're doing here is speculating, and saying that these things would be definitely being decreased. I mean, we don't know that. We do know if we can take just Colorado. You're saying that definitely drug addicts will be increased, or drug users will be increased. But just looking here at some numbers that I just wanted to see when it came to we'll use marijuana because that's the only real drug that's been legalized in the United States, in Colorado. It says in 2009, marijuana represented 10% of all traffic fatalities. Okay, by 2015, that had doubled to 21%, where marijuana was the cause of traffic fatalities. This is just in Colorado. So by you're saying that you're going to have a number of users. Now, this is over a 100% increase in the number of just traffic fatalities that were caused by marijuana. So if you add every other drug to that, drugs that we both agree impact the human body more than marijuana, I assume that you would agree that heroin and methamphetamine have a more significant impact on the human body and judgment than, say, marijuana. So now we have easy access to those. If you're talking about being able to legalize those and having those people come out and then take these drugs, I just don't see how you can say that you're going to have a decrease in crime because someone's going to come out and take some methamphetamine that really amps them up, that gets them their adrenaline going, that makes them make poor decisions. So then you're going to have these people that are going to be, you're going to have more. We already agree that there's going to be more people on methamphetamine. There's going to be more people on heroin. There's going to be more people on all these drugs that impairs people's abilities to make good decisions, to make safety decisions. I mean, we've all seen what happens when some people get hopped up on drugs. They can't make the best decisions. They, you know, I don't want to speculate here. I don't want to make a mockery of people who are taking drugs. I mean, we've seen the videos of people who take these certain drugs and then they go out and they attack the first person that they see, or they knock them down. They start eating parts of their body. They get shot by police and they still come at them. We've all seen these drugs. If these drugs were legal, we would have more instances of that. Now, when you're talking about gangs, even if you made drugs legal, the gangs are going to still exist and they're going to find some other way. So I don't think that it's going to hurt the gangs as much as we think. It didn't hurt. Whenever we fix one problem, the gangs come up with another. So I mean, I just don't think that the benefits that you're saying are going to actually be there if we were legalized drugs. But you would get the same help. You get much of the same things and much of the same goals that you're going to by skipping legalization and just moving towards a system of decriminalization, where users themselves are not going to be punished legally, or at least not punished in the same way through drug sentencing. So we would be able. The main problems is where we have drug charges that get done, that take people away from their family, lock them in jail. All the main things that are issues of drugs can be fixed by decriminalization without legalization. You can legalize the drugs that are not dangerous. You can tax them. We'll have a boost in revenue. You can keep the illegal drugs that are dangerous still illegal, so you can prosecute the people who are still getting them out in the market even harder, because you're not having to spend resources prosecuting the people who get caught with a bag of heroin or a couple doses of methamphetamine. You're not prosecuting those people in the same way. You're not spending the same money. You can use those same resources to go after the dealers and actually make some headway in getting those drugs off the street, or at least minimizing their impact. So I don't think that the upside is going to be as great as you think. I do think that having more people on these dangerous medications, for one, absolutely, you have to admit that if you have more people taking heroin because it's legalized, you're going to have more people dying from heroin overdoses. If you have more people taking methamphetamine, you're going to have more people dying from methamphetamine overdoses. You're also going to have more people acting and doing things on methamphetamine, or acting and doing things while high on heroin. That includes driving. So you're going to have more related deaths to these drugs by making them legal than we already have. So certain of these drugs, we have epidemics as they are now. If you have a huge number of people taking meth, they had in, I think, 2014, it said they had over 1 million people used meth in 1 year in 2014. Over 1 million people said that they used meth in 2014. If you were going to double that, you're going to have a huge number of increase in deaths. You're going to have drug-related crime. I mean, I don't see any upside that would justify legalization, that would justify the idea of being able to buy methamphetamine or heroin or any of the dangerous drugs over the counter the same way that you can buy an aspirin.
All right, just to make something crystal clear, both sides are speculation. You're trying to make it sound like what I'm saying, the points that I'm making are all speculation. We don't know the numbers. Well, your point is 100% speculation as well. You don't know how many more addicts will be added by making it legal. You don't know of those addicts how many more would die. Both sides are speculation. I think just the logic follows that the speculation that I'm making would far reduce the negative outcome than keeping it status quo. And that's for the vast number of reasons that I mentioned. One, legalizing it would greatly decrease the price, which decreasing the price would not incentivize those people that are looking for their fix to go ahead and rob, steal, kill, whatever brings them to do that. Two, the actual drugs that are going to be taken and ingested by people will be healthier. They'll know what they're taking. Three, and I go to the point you meant, crack would not, if drugs would have been legal, crack would never have been invented. It was only made because of the illegality and the high price that made the market for that. And now the reason why people are resorting to bath salts is because it's so cheap and people can get that fix. If drugs would be legal, people wouldn't be taking bath salts. So we greatly reduce the amount of risk by legalizing it. We would cut back 100%. I'm not saying gangs would be erased, but if you look back at prohibition and the cartels and the gangs that were started due to prohibition, which were hurt in a great way after prohibition, that I think that would be a very strong indicator to show that the amount of lives lost and the amount of harm and damage done due to that would also be greatly reduced. We would also reduce the amount of people that are going to prison. I know you mentioned decriminalization, but you also did mention that there are some drugs that you would keep illegal 100%. So we would reduce those people that are going to prison, simple users that are going to prison. Users that go to prison end up meeting up with other people, and they become different people once they go to prison. So there are so many ways by making drugs legal that you'd be cutting back the amount of lives lost. And to go back to my other point, you'd be cutting back the amount of wrong that is perpetrated by one person onto another. You're cutting back all of the wrong being done by one human being onto another human being. And the only wrong you'd be getting are those that, again, as bad as it is, those are people that are making their own decisions to do this thing to themselves. They are actually doing it and taking the drugs themselves. Now, that's a trade-off that I would take every single time. The numbers, again, it's speculation on both sides. I think with the amount of reasons, and I think just the logic would follow that the good far outweighs the bad in this scenario. And again, this is with disregarding the entire first part of the conversation, which obviously we don't see eye to eye on, but I'm just talking about in the practical application of whether drugs are legal or illegal. I think putting them on the scale, the pros far outweigh the cons as far as making drugs illegal.
All right. As we close up here, and I get what you're saying, I just want to see if we can come to an agreement that lets me win the debate here, but that we can both come to something. So, say that what you said is true. Say that by making drugs illegal, that everything that you said was true. Is there drugs that you can make that you could make illegal that you could, while still keeping the most dangerous drugs illegal? Like, say we made all of marijuana illegal to purchase, even if you want to, however you want to set it up, it's all legal. That is going to reduce the number of people that use some harder drugs because it's going to be able to they're not going to have to buy the cheaper alternatives. Correct. Right? So then say we even went, and this is mind-boggling, I mean, I don't agree with this at all, but say we even said cocaine and heroin and meth, they only kill 1 or 2 for every 100 that use it. Say that that's at the threshold. We're going to let those drugs be legal. So they're going to be legal. They're going to be made in, by our drug companies. They're going to be safe. We'll legalize those. Do you think then that you would be okay with legalizing some of those, but then still keeping drugs like fentanyl, still keeping drugs like crocodile, or outlawing all drugs made by over-the-counter products, or all drugs not made by manufacturers? Say, would you be willing to outlaw drugs that non-commercially made methamphetamine, made with products that you can buy from the store and mix together in a Coke bottle or in a truck lab? So the things that are unsafe, would you be okay outlawing those drugs, street methamphetamines or street heroin, or things that are not, FDA approved or whatever? Would you still be okay keeping those drugs illegal? Or would you still want to push for a complete blanket, make everything legal? If someone wants to make methamphetamine in a Coke bottle and sell it on the street, that's going to be perfectly legal, same as if they're selling it from a manufacturer and selling it at the local drugstore. I mean, is there any line that you would say, okay, we can make some of these legal and still keep the other ones illegal?
If you're asking if I'd be willing to make that trade-off, 100%, I'd be willing to make that trade-off because of, like I mentioned, all the good that would come out. But is that in line with my philosophical view? Absolutely not. I believe that every single individual should be able to make any single decision that pertains just to that person, and they're not harming or encroaching on the rights of anybody else. But again, I take that trade-off because we're gaining so much from it. I'm willing to